Welcome to the show, Wild Child Records. We present to you musician all the way from Ottawa, MacLeod. Matt, thanks for being on the show.
Oh, it's nice to see you again, Jay.
This is great. Look at the backdrop you have. Wow, now you're a musician. I see the guitar case, I see the drums, the amps. That's awesome. I love the mic too.
Yeah, man, this is a 1973 SM7. So it's the original SM7. This is like serial number, I think, like 286. It's the same microphone that Quincy Jones used when recording the Thriller album with Michael Jackson of the same vintage. I just love it. It's great. Like it's an incredible dynamic microphone.
What a backstory. That's a great backstory to start this interview. I mean, Quincy Jones and Thriller, and like I think I heard Thriller yesterday, and I still got like goosebumps.
It's so good. It's just
It's so good. Like Michael was just so ahead of everybody. Like,
This
come
guy would
on.
write. Yeah, I mean, he would write songs on demo tapes and like use his voice, for all of the instruments, and then hand that over to Quincy Jones, who would interpret like kind of like all of his like beatboxing and whatnot, and come up with these like irresistible soundscapes, right? Like Quincy Jones knows how to pull an orchestra together and make something happen, and like that, those records that he did with Michael are unbelievable. Like he's a genius, absolute
It's
genius.
it's funny talking about Michael because obviously we all know how talented Prince was.
Oh
Maybe
yeah,
more talented than Michael in his own way, but
unquestionably.
but back in the day, I mean, unless you're a true digger of history and musicians, and nobody really heard Prince. Like you never heard about Prince. Like there was Michael. Like they were almost like the same age, but for some reason Prince was like almost like locked away, where Michael had everything.
Oh yeah, I mean, Prince. I'm a huge fan of Prince
Oh
as
my!
well. Like massive, massive fan. Prince played every single instrument on every single song, until the Revolution, and he put together a band. I still believe that don't get me wrong, Michael Jackson's the king of pop,
Yep.
but there is like I believe that the perfect pop song was written by Prince. It's I think it's 1973. It's one of his earlier records. I've got it in here somewhere.
Is that when he made? Is that when he performed all of his own instruments when he went
Everything,
to Warner
everything.
Brothers, whatever, when he was 17 and said, "I need to do it all myself," and they went,
Ev-
"Okay, yeah,
he plays everything on it. I wanna be your lover is
that's
like
right."
the best pop song ever written. So yeah,
Now,
no,
was that his first hit? Was that his first hit too?
I don't know. I think he may have had a couple of like,
Minor
mid,
hits?
yeah,
Yeah.
minor hits, but that was like I think the first real big one. And it's I mean, if you haven't heard that song, like that is like the best pop song I've ever heard,
Like
personally.
this is great. Like here I am sitting here. I haven't even really introduced you, Matt. So let's start the show. Let me kind of introduce you. So again, on the show, welcome to Wild Child Records. On the show, we have today musician Matt Lulop. And Matt's not only a musician, Matt is a counselor in Ottawa, which we're going to talk briefly about. This is a music show, but he's also a combat vet. So he's a trifecta. You are one amazing man, Matt. So thank you so much for serving in Ottawa, helping the Canadians, and of course, everybody loves music. So
Absolutely.
yeah, so let's shift. Let's talk about music. Let's talk about your career. Let's start in the past. How did you become a musician? Where did the inspirations come from? And then we can talk about your skills and talents.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So I mean, you grew up in the suburbs. I grew up here in Orleans, the area that I represent, and always been a huge music fan. I was one of those weirdos that would like buy tapes, and if it didn't have liner notes, if there's a song that I really like, I would sit down and like write out the lyrics. I was always really interested in like in the poetry of lyrics. Um, I was the kid in the high school band playing clarinet, but like learning how to play like Glycerine by Bush X at that time, with the lawsuit or whatever, because there's a
Ugh.
Canadian band called Bush, right? So they had to add the
Yeah.
X here in Canada. Anyway, um,
Ha.
so I was a big nerd, like, and very self-taught. And then when I was about 13, my cousin was playing bass guitar in a band that he had formed with some high school friends or middle school friends. And so he asked if I would like come out and try out. And I was like, well, I don't play any instruments. Like, what do you want me to do? And they're like, oh, we'd want you to sing. So I was like, all right, fine. So I went out and, we would sit in my buddy Mark's basement. We all became very fast friends. And he would put his headphones in to the like tape deck behind him, and we would play like Green Day's Dookie from like start to finish, and he would like use the actual uh, tape as a metronome, and we would play that album
Ah,
start to finish, start to finish, start to finish. Started writing our own songs, and then when I was 14, we tried out to play at the Canadian Tulip Festival every year. Millions of tulip bulbs come to Ottawa from the Netherlands as part of the commemoration of Canada freeing Holland during the war.
yeah.
And we were the youngest, by far the youngest band there, and we got in, and so we got to play this showcase. It was an hour gig. We're 14 years old. We had I think 13 songs or something like that we'd written. It was like kind of like pop punk, which was very popular in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I that band naturally kind of folded like when I was about 18 or whatever, and then
That's not bad though. That's not
you,
bad.
you start to get more into girls than you do the music.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
but I kept writing. I kept writing through it. I played in a couple short-lived bands with some other local Ottawa musicians, and then I really started to kind of pick it back up again. I was serving overseas in Afghanistan, and I had about a 2-week period where I was kind of stuck on the bass. I didn't have any instruments with me, but I had some time, and so I went to like there was a library there, like it was a music. They had musical instruments in their library, which is something that
Nice.
kind of blew me away, and something that I helped as the chair of the Ottawa Public Library here in Ottawa to bring to the library here um, in Cumberland. I thought it was so inspiring that you don't have to send your dad to a pawn shop when you're 14 to go and buy your first guitar. You can take it out from the library. So I did that
Very cool.
yeah, I did that while I was in Afghanistan. I started running.
What'd you take out? What did you take out? A guitar or
Yeah,
whatever?
just like an
Yeah.
acoustic guitar, right?
Nice, nice.
And so I started like noodling around on it. I wrote, I kept a journal while I was in Afghanistan. And so at the back end of it, there's just like lyrics. I've just been writing poetry. And so I put a couple of those songs to music, or a couple of those poems to music. When I got out of the military and moved back to Ottawa after my tour, I called up an old high school buddy who his brother's a drummer. He plays in a couple of local bands out here, like Radmore being one of them. He's a lead singer of a band called Cast and Cadence. I called his brother, who's a bassist, Graham McIntyre, and said, "Hey, let's put together a group. I got some songs. I mean, I think we could really build something out of this." So he played in bands with other people. So we pulled some people together. I like met met this guy at Carlton, Josh Drazilov, who just looked like a guitarist, and we
Yeah.
were drinking. And like back then, I smoked. I was out in the smoking section. I was like, "Hey, do you play guitar?" And he was like, "How did you know?" And I'm like, "You just give me a vibe,
Ah,
man. You just
that's
give me a
great.
vibe." So he came
That's
out and tried
great.
out, and we put together Hearts and Minds, which is still together.
Yeah, I was gonna say that that
Yeah.
is such a cool story. I love the way you sort of included the military, and I like to talk about that a little bit because I know the military has such a big section for the band and inspiration, and it really is a good positive thing. Can you touch on that a little bit about the connection with the military?
Yeah, sure. I mean, like I was looking for a way to kind of get out some of those, very difficult feelings and experiences that I had while I was overseas, and that's why I started writing it. One of the first songs I wrote while I was overseas was this song, "But I Won't," and so I wrote this about like it's very difficult to have a long distance relationship, but it's even more difficult to have a long distance relationship and also be deployed and know that
Yeah,
you're not going to see this person for another you know 8 months. And I felt myself like just so inundated by everything that was going on around me. Like, I lived in a small combat outpost that we built along the Arghandab River in Panjwai, which is like kind of like the Taliban hotbed, right? And so, like, you try to maintain your relationships while you're there, but you only have a certain amount of time during the day that you can do that. And I found like, in juxtaposed with the experiences that I was having of like, going on a fighting patrol and like, getting shot at and having
yeah.
rockets fired at me and like having to worry about landmines, like just a mundane conversation, I found really, really difficult. So I wrote this song called "But I Won't," and it's like, like I want to write about missing my friends, but I won't.